Can we please have Professor Patrick Lumumba join us on stage? We're not worthy.
Can we give him a resounding,
no, seriously,
standing ovation, please? Please.
If you have to stand, stand.
Welcome, sir.
Good to meet you, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. I must begin by thanking my hosts, the Obi Jackson Foundation, and specifically Dr. and Mrs. Ernest Obiejesi, who have brought me all the way from Nairobi, Kenya, to be present this evening with you in Okija in Anambra. I'm acutely aware that this is a cultural event, and it gladdens my heart, therefore, that present in this assembly is the Oni of Ife, all the way from Oduduwa land. I'm also aware that Igwe Emeka Nnamdi Ekezie, who is the traditional ruler of Igbo, is present here in this assembly. And it also gladdens my heart that I have the opportunity this evening of being present in a land that I became aware of as a young man. I remember over 25 years ago, when I started going to school, I heard about this land of Igbo from great writers such as Chinua Achebe. If it was not Chinua Achebe that I was reading Flora Nwapa. And if it was not Flora, I was reading the poetry of Christopher Okigbo. And if I went beyond Igbo land, if I was not reading Okigbo, I was reading Cyprian Ekwensi. And if I was not reading Ekwensi, I was reading Wole Soyinka. So that even in those early days, I was able to recognize that what a young man cannot see standing on the Iroko tree, an old man will see sitting down. I remember those days with nostalgia. And I also remember that it was not only in the realm of literature that I met great Nigerians. The first person to teach me English through his book was another great Nigeria, Ogundipe. So that Nigeria and Igbo land has always been present in our lives in Africa. And when we started talking about the independence of Africa, if one did not read the great Zik of Africa, Nnamdi Azikiwe, one was not reading history. So there is a sense in which Nigeria and Igbo land has always been present. I remember not once, not twice, it being said in jest that if you go to any part of the world and you do not find an Igbo, run away from that place, because that is not a good place. And that is why, therefore, I'm able to say, when I stand before you here in the presence of greatness, that Nigeria has always remained alive. If with the departure of Chinua Achebe or Flora Nwapa, the world thought Nigeria could no longer produce literature, your own Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has emerged in the world. And if Hollywood and Bollywood thought that we could not produce theater, the great Pete Edochie and Yul Edochie have emerged from this land. And did not stop from Yul or Pete Edochie. On a daily basis, we are marveling about Genevieve Naji. And we are not only marveling about Genevieve Naji, Patience Oziakwo is also in our minds. And if we go further into the land of Oduduwa, Olu Jacobs is also present in our minds. So Nigeria remains great because Nigeria has been the cradle of culture in the continent of Africa. You know, when one thinks about Nigeria, one knows that Nigeria is the greatest nation on the continent of Africa. If one were to be dramatic about it, at the risk of repeating what others have said, one would say that when Nigeria catches a cold, all other African countries get cancer. But we are not going to be melodramatic about it. We are simply going to recognize that today we are present in this assembly courtesy of the O.B. Jackson Foundation to celebrate culture. And culture is not anything that is fossilized in the past. Culture is dynamic. It changes on a daily basis. But it's true that unless we are wedded to our cultural values, then we as a people, whether we are in Okija in Nigeria, or in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, or in Dakar, Senegal, we as the people of the continent of Africa will never be recognized for who we are. For those who know say that as long as the lions do not have historians, it is the exploits of the hunters that will be celebrated rather than the bravery of the lion. Today, therefore, we come here to celebrate culture, and we come to celebrate culture at the behest of the O.B. Jackson Foundation, an event that started 5 years ago. It is no longer an event. It has graduated into a festival, and I dare say that it must even have graduated to a movement. That is why we have men and women who have been drawn from different parts of Africa to be present here this evening at midnight to celebrate culture. I have sat down and I've listened and I've understood, and I now say that I've reached the stage in my submissions to you to say, Ndibo ekene munu. And now that I've saluted the Igbos who are present in this assembly, let us remind ourselves why it is that we are celebrating culture. You know, there is a great and immortal Kiswahili saying that he or she who does not recognize his or her culture will be eternally a slave. And we are here, therefore, to remind ourselves that the time has come for Africa and Africans to demand of the world that we can no longer afford the misfortune of communing with other civilizations as if we are children of a lesser God. We have come here to tell ourselves that we can no longer apologize for our condition, We have come here to remind ourselves that we can no longer be nostalgic of the past without projecting into the future. We have come here in order to celebrate the future as informed by the past. And that is why the face of Okija is the re-energization of our resolve and the recognition that we must side forward in the recognition that Africa is the cradle of humanity. Times without number, those who are in the business of revising history have attempted to deny that fact, but is now recognized beyond peradventure that humanity and civilization started here. When Europe was still dwelling in the caves, there were organized kingdoms in this part of the world. When Europe did not know what astronomy was, the doggone were speaking to the civilizations of the world. Africa is the cradle of civilization, and Africa is where we must be. But you know, our civilization was rudely interrupted. It was a rude interruption that saw some of our men and women being spirited away into other parts of the world. If Europe is what it is because of Africans. If America is what it is because of Africans. If Latin America is what it is because of Africans. If the Greeks are great philosophers, it's because the great philosophers were in the land of the Dudua. If the Jews have the gift of prophecy, it was because of the Igbo of Africa. And I dare say, I hear the Igbo say that they came from Israel. No, it is the Israelites that moved away from Igbo land into Israel. I hear the Igbo say that they worship like the Jews. No, it is the Jews that worship like the Igbo. And I say this not only and not to romanticize our culture and our tradition, but to remind us that for a long time we have judged ourselves too harshly, that the time has now come that we must recognize ourselves for who we are. You know, I told you that our civilization was interrupted, but even when it was interrupted, we were always alive to the fact that we must regain our self-esteem. And indeed, we regained our self-esteem, and today, as I speak to you, Africa has 55 artificial boundaries. We have come here today to dramatize the artificiality of those boundaries so that we may have that day when I can move from Nairobi, Kenya to Lagos in Nigeria without the necessity of a visa. I look forward to those days. I look forward to the days when I can move from Johannesburg in South Africa to Bangui in Central African Republic without the necessity of a visa. I look forward to the day when I shall move from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I only have one currency to contend with, not 38 currency. I look forward to that day. I look forward to that day when egusi soup will be consumed in West Africa as it is consumed in Nigeria. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when Hollywood and Bollywood will no longer have a place in our television, and Nollywood and Riverwood and Bongowood would be what we watch. I look forward to those days. I look forward to the days when we shall celebrate Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and not other authors. I look forward to that day. And I'm reminding ourselves and the young men and women who are present in this assembly that that can happen and that will happen, but that we must work at it. Oh, fellow Africans, how it pains me times without number when I see young men and women moving from Banjul in the Gambia, from Cotonou and Lomé, from Monrovia and Freetown, from Accra in Ghana, from Lagos, crossing the Sahara and meeting their death in the Mediterranean in search of some greener pasture, yet the pasture is greener on this side. I look forward to the day when Africans will be treated with dignity at every airport in the world. I look forward to that day. And that is why we are here in Okija, to remind ourselves that we have the ability, that we have both the intellectual wherewithal, that we have the capability and the capacity not only of demonstrating to ourselves, but demonstrating to the world that we can achieve it. And Okija, in a manner of speaking, is the beginning of that journey. A journey that started 5 years ago. You know, I do not possess the prophetic gift of the Egugus of Igbo land, but I am able to look at the future. And when I look at that future, and I use the face of Okija as my vantage points, I see many things. I see Africa rising. I see Africa rising in agriculture. I see jollof rice and rice that is consumed in Nigeria, being produced in Nigeria, and being produced in Ghana, and being produced in Senegal. I see that. I see yams and plantains being produced in Nairobi, Kenya, and in Ethiopia. I see that. I see the beautiful clothes that are worn by Nigerians not being made in the Netherlands, but being made in Kaduna in Nigeria. I see that. I see the beautiful things that are being done in this part of the world happening here. This morning, when I had the privilege and advantage at once of visiting the O.B. Jackson Women and Children's Hospital, and I saw the state of the art, and I saw how lifeless children were regaining life, I am convinced that time is coming when no Nigerian will visit the United States of America to receive treatment. I see and look forward to the day when no African will go to India or to Dubai to receive treatment. I look forward to those days. I look forward to the day when we will not go to Dubai to buy anything. We will come to Lagos in Nigeria. We will come to Anambra. We will come to Onitsha. I see those days. And one need not be a Jewish prophet nor be related to one to realize that that is a possibility. It is written on the wall that as long as we have our own self-esteem, history has demonstrated not once, not twice, but times without number, that when a people make a decision and make a resolve that they are going to achieve, then they cannot be stopped. Okija and the face of Okija and this cultural festival is a dramatization and a demonstration to ourselves that we can achieve it. But if we are going to achieve it, we will achieve it because of the young men and women who are present in this assembly. You know, throughout history, countries and places have changed because young men and women have taken a resolve. So today, I am urging all of us who are present here to make a solemn vow, that we will from today only seek the things that require effort by making effort. We make a solemn vow that we will not run away from our countries, that we will develop our countries and that we are not children of a lesser God. I am asking all of us who are present here to tell the world that whether it is in engineering, we have the capacity to build our roads. I am reminding each one of us here to tell the world that if it is in medicine, we have the capacity to treat ourselves. I'm reminding those who are present here to tell the world that if it is in agriculture, we are capable of feeding ourselves. That if it is in technology, we are capable of succeeding in that area, so that when we meet with the rest of civilization, whether it's the Chinese or the English or the Americans, they will be able to say, lo and behold, the Negroes are capable of delivering, and that the Negroes are capable of producing, and that the Negroes are not children of a lesser God. I have no doubt in my mind when I look at those who are present here, when I look at the Oni of Ife, when I look at the Igwe, when I look at the professionals who are present here, that today is a great day. It is a great day because we are talking to each other at midnight. And when you talk to each other at midnight, you, the Igbo, are in the business of generating proverbs. One of the great proverbs that you generated is that when one sees a frog coming into daylight, then you know that something is after its life. It is midnight, but courtesy of technology, there is daylight in this assembly. And we who are the frogs, we are out here because there is something that is after our life. That thing is the realization that if we are not faithful to our cultural pursuits, then we will not realize what we deserve. At midnight, men and women do not talk for too long. At midnight, we only remind ourselves that this is a great cultural event. At midnight, we only remind ourselves that each one of us has a role to play. At midnight, we only remind ourselves that we younger people must listen to the older people. At midnight, we remind ourselves that the Igbo say that those children who wash their hands will eat with kings. At midnight, we remind ourselves that our mothers are great. That is why you Igbos name your children Neka, because mother is great. At midnight, we remind ourselves that we are going forward. At midnight, we are reminding ourselves that the 55 countries of Africa are artificial. At midnight, we are reminding ourselves that we have the ability. At midnight, we are recognizing that Africa will be great. At midnight, we remind ourselves that Africa will be great because Okija has started it. At midnight, we are reminding ourselves that the Igbos are once again beginning to regenerate African energy. At midnight, we are reminding ourselves that we can do it. At midnight, we are reminding ourselves that we are the solution to our problems. At midnight, we are recognizing that we must do it, and that if we don't do it, it will be done on us. At midnight, we therefore stop. God bless.